She doesn't have clearance for medical gear. Remove the child, or I'll lock the gate myself. That's what Belinda Whitaker, president of the Willow Creek Enclave HOA, snarled while jabbing a manicured finger at my 5-year-old daughter Harper, who was floating peacefully in the community pool with her purple snorkel mask catching the afternoon sun like tiny butterfly wings. Her voice dripped that fake polite poison they all learn in HOA orientation. Clinical, superior, the kind that says, "I'm protecting everyone," while actually just protecting her own little throne. "I'm warning you, Mr. Hale," she added with that tight little smile. "This community cannot tolerate personal exceptions, even for special circumstances." I didn't blink. "You don't have the authority to override a county-inspected gate," I said, voice flat as concrete. "And that mask isn't equipment. It's ADA-protected therapy for her sensory processing disorder." That's when Belinda smiled wider, the kind of smile that makes you want to check if your wallet's still there. If you're watching this and you think HOA boards can't touch your kids, think again. I'm Marcus Hale, former state compliance officer. 20 years chasing down crooked contractors and fake permits before my wife passed, and I needed somewhere quiet for Harper and me. We moved to Willow Creek Enclave 6 months ago because the brochure promised peaceful living under thoughtful governance. Thoughtful. Right. The only thing thoughtful about Belinda was how thoughtfully she'd spent the last 3 months turning me into the neighborhood villain. First, it was the unauthorized memorial planter I put out for my late wife, cited twice for visual clutter. Then the anonymous app posts calling me the irresponsible single dad whose kid had meltdowns in public. They didn't mention Harper's doctors had written aquatic therapy into her plan, 20 minutes of underwater motion a day to quiet the world when it got too loud. That purple snorkel mask? She called it her butterfly. It was the last thing that still made her laugh like her mom used to. The pool was supposed to be our safe place. I'd stepped exactly 10 feet away to grab her towel and glucose gummies. 43 seconds. I timed it later on the security footage. Belinda watched the whole thing from the HOA office window across the path, sipping from her stupid ceramic mug that read, "Rules protect us all," in perfect cursive. I heard the gate click before I saw it. The override panel in her office. Manual lock. Harper was still inside. I was out. Her body bumped the tiled edge as the mask slipped. I screamed her name, slammed my shoulder into the aluminum, tried the latch. Nothing. The system had defaulted to full lockdown because no badge was swiped. Belinda's blinds fluttered once. She didn't come out. I ripped the fire extinguisher off the wall bracket and shattered the latch clean off. 67 seconds too late. They said I should have had someone else watching. They said I shouldn't have left her alone even for a minute. But I wasn't far. Belinda knew that. She saw it on the surveillance feed and still hit the button. When the paramedics finally arrived, when I knelt beside the only child I had left, soaked in chlorinated water and the worst kind of silence, Belinda Whitaker walked up in her pastel blazer and handed me a pink citation. Violation 6B, misuse of medical devices and shared amenity spaces. "This one's serious," she said. Not an apology. Not even a question. Just a carbon copy with a fine total and a checkbox marked safety hazard. My hands shook so hard I almost dropped it. But the citation didn't have any legal reference. No subclause. No ordinance number. No stamp. That was the moment I realized something far worse than negligence had happened. Because for a violation that serious, there should have been a vote, a ratified change, a record filed with the county. I'd spent 2 decades making sure those records existed. This one didn't. And Belinda had just killed my daughter with a rule that legally didn't exist. The next morning, the citation was still taped to my door, pink paper curling at the edges like it was embarrassed to be there. I left it. I wanted to see how far she'd go. By noon, a new bulletin popped up in the community app. "We regret to inform residents that a child incident occurred yesterday at the pool. Please remember that unauthorized flotation or breathing devices are prohibited under HOA Policy 6B. No name. No mention of Harper. No mention that she drowned while I was locked out. Just child incident." Belinda's play was classic. Minimize, redirect, control the narrative before anyone asked questions. I drove straight to the HOA office, that cute little stucco building with the fake brick trim and the same mug sitting on her desk like a crown. She didn't look surprised when I walked in. She looked ready. I assume you're here about the citation, she said, sliding another copy toward me. The board will be reviewing negligence findings at the next meeting. Negligence? I repeated. Your daughter wasn't authorized for medical devices in the common area, she continued, adjusting her collar like we were discussing lawn fertilizer. Reliable if others assume that kind of behavior is acceptable. She had a medical accommodation, ADA protected. I submitted it twice on move-in. She shrugged. I can only go off the records I have. I took a breath. The walls were lined with old black and white photos of ribbon cuttings and smiling residents holding cheap plastic shovels. The one thing missing? Any documentation. Where are the minutes from the policy vote? I asked. What vote? She said, eyes narrowing. Policy 6B has been on file since 2020. You should have read the handbook. I nodded once. Not because I believed her, because I'd just confirmed what I came for. The file didn't exist. She never expected anyone to check. Most people are too busy, too scared, or too grief-stricken to dig. Belinda had built her entire kingdom on that assumption. I walked out without taking the citation. Across the parking lot, the pool gate was already shut again. Yellow caution tape gone. 2 kids laughing at the edge with their mom like nothing had happened. The water glittered like it was mocking me. I couldn't unsee the splash. Couldn't unhear the silence after. And I couldn't forget how fast Belinda turned my daughter's death into a liability issue. By the time I got home, 3 more residents had forwarded me HOA messages with revised safety bulletins. All of them framed Harper's death as noncompliance. Some even mentioned poolside equipment left unattended. Not once did they name me or her. They just painted shadows and waited for the community to fill them in with gossip. They didn't know who I really was. They didn't know I'd spent years drafting HOA enforcement standards for the state. They didn't know I could spot a procedural flaw faster than most lawyers could spell bylaw. And they definitely didn't know I had time. I wasn't a broken single dad anymore. I was the guy who'd just been handed a loaded gun made of missing paperwork. The maintenance cart was parked crooked on the edge of the pool deck that evening, half hidden by the trellis. I spotted Hank Rivera crouched by the pump box, tightening bolts that didn't need tightening. His shoulders had that same tight coil I'd seen in courtrooms, the look of a man whose conscience was eating him alive from the inside. I didn't say anything at first, just stood by the chain link. The new latch gleamed like it was proud of itself. Hank finally noticed me. His shoulders stiffened. You the one they've got replacing the gate system? I asked quietly. He nodded once. Strange, I said. Considering the override panels are inside the HOA office, not the maintenance shed. Now he turned. His eyes darted to the cameras, the clubhouse, every place Belinda might be watching. I'm not looking to ruin anyone's job, I added. But someone already lost their life. He swallowed hard. They told me it was an automatic lock. Timed cycle. It wasn't. I know, I said. I saw the feed, he whispered. Not the live one, the time-stamped archive. She hit the override. Manual entry. No error. I tried to bring it up. Belinda said it was a gray zone action, that the system needed maintenance. But I watched the logs. Clean command from admin01, her terminal. Do you still have those logs? He wiped his hands on his uniform. Offsite. Personal backups. I've been fined 5 times since I started here. Wrong paint shade, security light angle, you name it. I started documenting everything. Helps me sleep. Bring it to my place before 8 tomorrow, I said. Hank looked at me like I'd asked him to jump off a cliff. I've got 2 kids, he muttered. My wife says we can't afford another fine. Belinda's got the board wrapped around her finger. I didn't push. I just nodded. Tell me what you need, and I'll make sure they never fine you again. He stared at the water for a long second. I saw your little girl in that pool. I've been hearing her splash in my dreams every single night. The next morning, a new notice was stapled to every mailbox. Emergency policy revision. Effective immediately, all residents prohibited from bringing unsanctioned breathing or medical devices into shared amenities. Violations equal suspension of facility access. It was a panic move. Belinda was trying to bury the lie before sunlight hit it. She didn't know Hank had already slid a thumb drive into my hand at dawn, eyes bloodshot, voice barely there. Manual override at 3:12 p.m. From HOA Admin 01, her office. System stable. No fault. Plus the entire empty 2020 amendment folder labeled pool rules revised. Nothing inside. Not a vote. Not a filing. Just air. I didn't go to the emergency board meeting that night. I watched through the clubhouse glass walls instead. Belinda stood at the front table in her signature pastel blazer, flanked by two nodding bobbleheads. The room was half full, everyone whispering about the new notices. She cleared her throat. In light of recent tragic developments, the board has expedited safety reforms originally proposed in 2020. These are not punitive. They are preventative. No mention of Harper. Just tragic developments and policy ambiguity. A woman in the back raised her hand, the same one who'd forwarded me the bulletin blaming negligent parents. Was there actually a vote on these 2020 changes? Belinda's jaw tightened. The policy was approved in accordance with our governing documents. Was it filed with the county? Someone else asked. She smiled thinly. The HOA has full autonomy on internal policies. That's when Darren from 2 doors down stood up. My kid has asthma. We've used the same kind of snorkel before. So you're saying I'll get banned now? If it's not on the approved list, yes. And where exactly is this list? Darren laughed short and sharp. We're banning people for violating a list that doesn't exist yet? The room stirred. For the first time I saw the crack. Not outrage yet, just the confused little shuffle of sheep realizing the shepherd might be full of it. Belinda dismissed the meeting with her usual, "Thank you for your cooperation, and these rules exist to protect us all." Nobody clapped. They just left. Eyes down. Except Darren, who caught my gaze through the glass and gave me the smallest nod. It wasn't war yet. But peace was officially dead. I spent the next morning at the county registrar's office, that squat brick building with sun-warped blinds and a faded state seal. I didn't wear a suit. I didn't need to. I knew exactly what to ask for. The clerk slid a thin manila folder across the desk after 10 minutes. Inside, for documents. Change of treasurer form, 1 fireworks permit, 2 election notices. Nothing from 2020. No policy amendments. No quorum certifications. No ratified vote language. You sure this is complete? I asked. She turned the monitor so I could see. If it wasn't filed through our office, it doesn't exist. Clean. Final. The same words I'd used in court 100 times. I sat in my truck afterward with the folder on the passenger seat like a corpse. Policy 6B, the sword Belinda had swung at my daughter, had no legal foundation. 0. Which meant the gate override, the citation, the new ban, everything was built on a lie. The entire disciplinary system she'd weaponized was a shell game. And she'd counted on no one being smart or angry enough to flip the table. She didn't know I still had an active bar card and nothing left to lose. I spent 2 hours drafting a demand letter, not from me, but from the Office of Legal Compliance I still consulted for. It cited chapter and verse of the North Carolina Planned Community Act, attached Hank's logs, and politely invited the board to voluntarily suspend enforcement of 6B until proper documentation appeared. I wasn't giving them a chance to fix it. I was giving them rope. That evening I dropped the sealed envelope in the HOA box and emailed a copy to the board's public account. Then I forwarded everything, plus Hank's screen recording, to Inspector Julian Marin at County Compliance. His out-of-office said he'd be back Monday. Perfect. By Monday, Belinda would either admit the clause was fake or lie under pressure. Either way, the trap was set. Saturday afternoon brought silence. No rebuttal. No emergency bulletin. No snarky app post. Her quiet was louder than any scream. I took a walk through the east side of the enclave. A few neighbors nodded now. One guy gave me a hesitant thumbs up before looking away fast. They knew. They were watching. The knock came at dusk, nervous, quick taps. Hank stood on my porch clutching a manila envelope like it was radioactive. Didn't trust email, he said. Board monitors everything. Inside were 7 pages of override logs. Every manual command since installation. The one tied to Harper stood out like a fresh wound. Admin override. User HOA 01. Time 15 hours 12 minutes and 38 seconds. Result locked. No other overrides that month. Plus photos. One of the inside panel housing. Another of Belinda's printed policy binder open to the index where 6B was marked, drafted 2020, not yet voted. She'd been hiding it in plain sight. I dropped the envelope on my desk and just sat there. No denying it anymore. Belinda knew the clause had never passed. She knew the override hadn't been approved. She knew the bylaws were never filed. And she still enforced it like gospel. Harper hadn't died because of confusion. She died because one woman decided fiction was close enough to law. That night, I pulled out the purple snorkel mask. Hospital had returned it in a plastic bag. It still smelled faintly of chlorine and little girl breath. I placed it on my desk beside the logs. One memory, one fact, both undeniable. This wasn't just about Belinda anymore. It was about every board president who ever hid behind a fake clause and said, "We're just doing our job." It was about the neighbors too afraid to speak, the residents too tired to fight. It was about the system that let people like her act with unchecked power under the cover of community standards. I wasn't collecting evidence anymore. I was done drafting letters. It was time to file. Before sunrise, I drove to the county courthouse. I submitted the petition for injunctive relief and the civil wrongful death complaint naming fraudulent enforcement of unratified bylaws as the cause. The clerk stamped the papers without a word. Just another case in the stack. But this one had teeth. I walked out with copies in one hand and Harper's mask in my jacket pocket. For the first time since the gate slammed shut, I felt control return. Not over the outcome, over the truth. Sunday passed in that heavy kind of silence that settles right before a storm. No new posts from Belinda. No bulletins. Just the whole enclave holding its breath. At 6:42 a.m. Monday, there was a single knock. Hank stood there, face pale. "She called an emergency board meeting," he said, stepping inside. "Just the board, no residents. She's rattled. Asked for system access logs. Tried to reset admin credentials. But she doesn't know I kept mirrored backups." He pulled out a folded printout, server access logs showing Belinda frantically trying to scrub the override data after my letter hit. "She's going to blame me," he added quietly. I didn't sugarcoat it. Cowards with power always do. "But she won't get the chance. I need you to testify." Hank stared at the photo of Harper on the shelf. Yellow swimsuit, grin wide, mask slung over her arm. "My wife's gonna hate this. We've already been fined into the ground. No savings left." "She won't fine you again," I said. "Not after what's coming. I'll file for witness protection under retaliatory governance. She touches your paycheck, she'll be in court before she finishes the sentence." He looked at the snorkel mask on the desk. "I've got girls," he said finally. "I'd want someone to speak if it were them. I'll be there." That afternoon, the county clerk confirmed. Willow Creek Enclave HOA board now under administrative inquiry. Public hearing scheduled for Wednesday, 10 a.m. They weren't waiting. They were coming in hot. By midnight, my legal brief was finished. Timestamps, policy gaps, empty filing folders, ADA violations, surveillance logs, override records, death certificate, citation, Hank's statement, county inspection waivers. A whole book of absence. Absence, in the right hands, is evidence. I arrived at the county building an hour early. The briefcase in my hand held every lie Belinda Whitaker had tried to turn into law. But it wasn't the paperwork that mattered. It was what the paperwork proved. A system designed to punish the obedient and protect the frauds. At 9:40, the hearing room filled, not with lawyers, with residents. Some curious, some suspicious. A few because they'd heard the whispers about the gate, the silence, the dad who hadn't left his house in weeks and now walked like he was carrying something sharper than grief. Belinda arrived last. Pastel blazer, HOA badge clipped like armor. Two board members flanked her, both looking like they'd rather be anywhere else. She didn't make eye contact. Her game had always been controlled by proxy, fines in the mail, shaming through apps. She'd never been in a room where she wasn't holding the gavel. At 10 a.m., the clerk called us forward. I introduced myself, stated my background, laid out the purpose. Today I present evidence that the Willow Creek Enclave HOA enforced unratified policy Clause 6B to restrict ADA-protected devices without legal authority. This clause was the basis for the pool citation issued after the drowning death of my daughter Harper Hale. The words landed like slow-motion punches. I went document by document. Missing county filings. Override logs. Witness affidavit. Failed credential scrubs. Gate certification lapse. I didn't dramatize. I didn't have to. The evidence did the screaming. Then I played the silent screen recording. HOA admin 01 override command at 15 hours 12 minutes and 38 seconds, exactly when I was locked out. No sound, just the digital act of closing a gate on a little girl. When I finished, I stepped back. Belinda stood only after the inspector prompted her. She didn't deny the override, claimed it was an automated safety precaution, that the system was still in testing, that community safety overrides were within scope. When asked for the filing that authorized Clause 6B, she faltered. When asked for the 2020 vote certification, she had nothing. When asked to explain installing the gate system without inspector recertification, she went silent. She looked like a queen standing over her own collapsed castle. Inspector Marin's voice was calm but sharp as a scalpel. To clarify, Mrs. Whitaker, are you stating under oath that Clause 6B was legally enforceable at the time of the override? Belinda hesitated. Her hand twitched at the podium. I was under the impression the clause had been ratified. Impressions are not legal grounds, Marin replied. And there is no record of a vote, no filing with the county, and no minutes to support its existence. One board member slowly slid his chair away from her, just enough for everyone to see. Belinda reached for her folder, flipping laminated pages like the answer might magically appear. I have internal board notes, she offered weakly. Draft language agreed on verbally. Verbal agreements are not legally binding under the Uniform Plan Community Act, Marin said. You know that. The county attorney leaned in. Does the board acknowledge the override system was never recertified after installation? No answer. He repeated it. Finally, the second board member cleared her throat. I was told it was up to code. I never saw an inspection certificate. Marin looked at me. Mr. Hale, do you have that installation record? I handed it over. He scanned it. Model number doesn't match any registered recertification in our database. The last approved gate hardware was installed in 2017. Confirmation. The gate that killed my daughter wasn't just dangerous, it was illegal. Belinda looked like she'd been slapped. She opened her mouth, closed it. Still standing, but the floor beneath her had turned to dust. Marin shifted forward. The administrative office will launch a formal audit into Willow Creek Enclave HOA operations effective immediately. All disciplinary actions under Clause 6 be suspended pending review. Any safety modifications without inspection will result in citation and potential shutdown. He paused. Finally, I recommend the board consider temporary leadership transition while the county completes its inquiry. Belinda's eyes widened. You're asking me to resign? No, Marin said. I'm advising you not to delay the inevitable. Hank stood next. No tie, just his worn uniform and a small USB drive. I have something else, he said, plugging it in. The screen filled with surveillance footage from that day. Harper floating. Me stepping away. The gate closing. My hands slamming the latch. The desperation in every frame. No audio needed. The room felt it. When the video ended, nobody spoke. Not even Belinda. Marin folded his hands. We'll review all materials and release findings in 72 hours. But from where I'm sitting, this looks like a preventable death caused by unauthorized enforcement of power. The hearing adjourned with nothing but the rustle of chairs and the sound of a community finally waking up. As people filed out, Darren caught me by the stairs. We're having a vote tonight, he said quietly. Emergency quorum. We're done with her. I nodded. My voice stayed stuck. I didn't need to speak. The silence had finally turned against her. The vote happened faster than anyone expected. By sunset, most homes had the slip in their mailbox. White paper, bold black ink. Motion to remove Belinda Whitaker as HOA board president. Yes or no? Neighbors went door to door with clipboards. Eyes that no longer darted away when they passed me. For weeks I'd been the ghost with the dead daughter. Now I was the man who cracked the dam. By 8 p.m., Darren knocked with the tally. We got 68%. She doesn't have the votes, I said. Technically, the removal triggered a 72-hour transition and a ratification meeting, but the result was already written. Belinda wouldn't last the week. We walked past the clubhouse. Lights off. Her car gone. She'd cleared out earlier, packed her office into one banker's box, and vanished without a word. We paused by the pool gate. A new laminated sign hung there now. Gate system under county review. ADA accommodations permitted. The gate stood unlocked. The water shimmered under the floodlights, peaceful, deceptive. Darren stared at it. I used to bring my kid here every Thursday. After what happened, she refused. Thought she'd be next. I didn't answer. We both knew the battle wasn't over yet. The next morning, the county email arrived. Formal review findings, failure to certify bylaws, unauthorized policy enforcement, system compliance violations. Belinda's override had broken municipal codes, ADA provisions, and inspection law. The board was ordered dissolved pending reorganization. All previous citations under 6B voided. Fines refunded. A third-party manager would oversee operations for 90 days. None of it brought Harper back. But it was something. I stood at the edge of the pool that evening as the sun turned the water gold. In my hand was the purple snorkel mask. It had taken weeks to decide what to do with it. Hank arrived quietly beside me, a small metal plaque under his arm. The engraving read, Harper's Cove, in memory of those who needed space to breathe. ADA compliant. Permanently protected. We knelt together behind the pool wall, planted the stake, packed the soil. The mask went inside a waterproof box Hank had built himself. We buried it like a foundation, not a funeral. By nightfall, the new sign was up. A few families gathered at the edge. A little girl tugged her mom's hand, asking if she could wear her floaties again. The mom nodded. Just like that, the pool belonged to the kids again. I stood back and let the memory hurt. Because it should. Because that pain is what guarantees it never happens again. The community hall filled faster than anyone expected that final night. Folding chairs scraped across the floor as families, couples, retirees filed in. No passive compliance this time. No Belinda at the front with laminated bullet points. This was the reckoning. Temporary moderator Grant Tulliver stood at the podium looking like he'd swallowed a lemon. Tonight, we finalized the emergency vote results and formally acknowledged the new board transition. Before we proceed, we've been asked to hear from Mr. Hale. All eyes turned. I stepped forward. No notes. Just the weight of Harper's mask still warm in my pocket and the kind of clarity that only comes after something irreparable. I'm not going to list what happened. You already know. You've seen the letters, heard the rumors, watched the silence spread like mold through this neighborhood. My daughter Harper died because someone abused a rule that didn't exist. She was 5. Couldn't find Idaho on a map, but could tell you which pool days were her favorite. She had a medical condition we disclosed twice, requiring aquatic sensory therapy to keep her calm, to keep her smiling, to keep her from shutting down. My voice caught, but I kept going. She wore a snorkel designed for children, labeled safe. For that she was locked behind a gate by someone who had no right. The override came from the HOA office. The policy, Clause 6B, was never filed, never voted, never legal. I raised the folder. This is the evidence. Records. Logs. Voided filings. A timeline of decisions that built a trap around a child who did nothing wrong. I turned slightly. Belinda sat in the third row now, no badge, no folder, no defense. But this meeting isn't just about what was done to my daughter. It's about what we all allowed to happen in her name. About the fear, the silence, the fines, the threats. About how power stays exactly where people stop looking. The board failed this community. Not just in death, but in design. I stepped back. No one applauded. That wasn't the kind of moment this was. Grant cleared his throat. The vote has been counted. Belinda Whitaker is hereby removed from her position effective immediately. A transition council will oversee reorganization. He looked straight at her. You are no longer authorized to speak on behalf of Willow Creek Enclave. Belinda didn't argue, didn't speak, just gathered her purse and walked toward the door like she was escaping a fire that had finally reached her skin. She passed me without eye contact. For the first time, she looked small. After the meeting, Darren caught me by the stairs. We're setting up a memorial committee, kids safety training, AED stations, actual protection. Hank came next. Didn't say much. Just placed a small envelope in my hand. For court, if you still need it. Inside were notarized copies of every override log and his permanent statement filed with the county. When I left the hall, the sky was clear. I walked home past the pool, surface still under the lights. For the first time, I didn't turn away. I stood at the gate and let the memory come. But this time I didn't feel powerless. Because I'd dragged the truth into a room full of silence, and it had echoed. The county's final report arrived 3 weeks later, 32 pages of findings, citations, legal conclusions. Failure to ratify governing policy. Failure to disclose safety infrastructure. Direct link to injury and fatality due to procedural negligence. Clause 6B labeled unenforceable and invalid. Belinda banned from serving on any HOA in the state for life. The civil case never went to trial. She settled. The money wasn't important. I didn't keep it. A portion funded the new ADA-compliant sensory pool addition at Harper's Cove. The rest went into a legal assistance fund for families facing wrongful HOA enforcement because there were more of them than I ever imagined. The week Harper's Cove officially reopened, I stood at the water's edge before anyone arrived. The dedication plaque was already installed, small bronze beneath the garden trellis where the mask was buried. In memory of Harper Hale. Because access should never be a fight. I ran my fingers over her name. The water was calm. Early light glinted across it like a second sky. It wasn't just about her anymore. It was about every child denied care in the name of policy. Every family fined into silence. Every neighbor who gave up because the system said it wasn't worth pushing back. We proved otherwise. Not with rage, but with records. With timestamps. With missing minutes that turned into admissions. Belinda lost because she built power on the assumption that no one would check. And I won because I did. Later that morning, a mother approached the gate, holding her son's hand. He was maybe 6, bright red flotation mask in his other fist, same shape as Harper's. He looked up at me. Is this where the girl swam? I smiled just a little. It is. Was she scared? I shook my head. Not once. His mother nodded before they stepped through. The gate didn't lock behind them. It didn't need to. That battle was over. I watched the boy paddle out, arms splashing. Laughter echoed across the concrete. That's what the HOA tried to silence. That's what survived. And if you've made it this far, if you're still watching, I need you to know something. It doesn't take a compliance officer to bring down people like Belinda. It takes proof. Persistence. The willingness to outlast their tactics and meet them where they least expect. In the records, in the minutes, in the law they never thought you'd read. So if you've ever been silenced, fined, pushed, or threatened by a board that thinks power comes from position, save this. Share this. Because the next time someone tells you, that's just how it is, you'll know better. Now here's the question I want you to answer honestly in the comments. Was Belinda Whitaker truly the villain here, or are we all a little guilty for letting people like her stay in power until it's our own kid floating behind the gate? Drop your thoughts below. I'm reading every single one.